Let's turn now to Deval Patrick, former Democratic governor of Massachusetts. He also served as the former assistant attorney general in the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division under President Clinton. He is now a co-chair of American Bridge 21st Century. It's a super PAC. Governor, thanks for your time as always. Let's start on the subject of what the president-elect can and should do in these perilous times. The Washington Post summarizing the tightrope that he is walking like this. Republicans call for unity, but won't acknowledge Biden won fairly. The president-elect, Governor, as you know, has made unity a key tenet of his campaign, of the transition. How do you unify with people who won't even acknowledge that you won?
Well, I think, first of all, that the president-elect has been pitch perfect since the election. He has been consistent about the importance of not just going back to what we used to do and what we used to have, even though that might be in the interest of calm, but trying to bring a hopeful and forward-looking vision. And he has shown what his actions are going to be, whether it's trying to get the economy reignited, addressing the pandemic crisis, and those are two linked crises, as you know, Craig. Dealing with this rise of heavily militarized white supremacy, which has actually been on the rise and been warned about for a long, long time by federal and state law enforcement. It's a very broad agenda. There is more to it, and I think he needs to do as much as he can, as fast as he can, because nothing substitutes for action.
On day one of his administration, as you just heard from our correspondent there in Delaware, Mr. Biden says that he plans to issue executive orders to, among other things, have the United States rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement. He plans to reverse President Trump's Muslim travel ban, mandate masks on federal property and for interstate travel. Governor, in your view, how much of the president-elect's first few weeks in office will be about undoing what President Trump did?
Well, I think a lot of it, Craig, but not all of it, because, frankly, there's a lot that has to be done with the help and the collegiality and cooperation of the Congress. Big bills like the COVID-19 relief bill, the immigration reform, which has been forecast. These require engagement with the Congress. The others, where he can take executive action, he should. And that is not in every case simply, as I said, going back to what we used to do before. There are some things like the Muslim travel ban. That one's easy. But there are others, perhaps, where simply undoing isn't enough. We have to think about what comes in place. I can't give you a specific example, but I'm sure that they are there. And I think this team has shown and will show that they're very thoughtful about how they do that. What they're trying to do right now, I sense, is make a clean break with the Trump administration, with its intentional daily divisiveness. Divisiveness as a governing strategy. Frankly, their interest in governing for those who, for all of us, those who voted for and those who didn't. Their notion of being a citizen of the whole world these are all critically important to repairing the administration's, not the administration's, but the country's reputation and its effectiveness and its power. And I think this team is being very, very intentional about all of that.
Governor Patrick, as you know, our nation's capital, practically a fortress right now after the violence on January 6th, after the insurrection and riot. You know the Justice Department well. You know how it works. How do you think it's handled the investigation so far into what happened at that Capitol?
Well, I think the FBI, from news reports, seems to have come back to life. They are the investigations seem to be quite broad. They're gathering evidence from the social media posts, from videotapes and so forth, of who was there and who did what. And I think that's important. They have indicated that they're not doing deals, that they're not letting people off easy, because, frankly, this was a profoundly important and dangerous and a consequential attack on both the symbol and the fact of our democracy, and that has to be taken with real seriousness. I am sure, and we're hearing it already from Republicans, I am sure that there will be discussion and even pressure about whether holding folks to account, whether they are members of the mob, right up to the outgoing president and his family, whether holding them to account is or is not consistent with unifying the country and moving forward. But it is particularly frustrating for me, and I'll bet for a bunch of others, to hear some of those calls about, look the other way, let's move on, come from the very people who helped incite the insurrection to begin with. And there is something so twisted, so cynical about that. This is an attack around which there have to be consequences to send the message that we will defend our democracy.
Governor Deval Patrick, former Massachusetts governor. We'll have to leave it there, Governor. Thank you so much, as always. Thanks for your time.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.